Look at this. A shameful corner of any workshop. A giant pile of scrap. Let's see if we can do something about that. Now I'm sure every workshop's got their own little pile of scrap. Offcuts from various projects over the years that you've convinced yourself are going to come in handy in the future. They pile up, so it's time to start tackling mine. So I'm starting off here with a couple of thin strips of acacia wood that are from the scrap pile, along with a couple of little bits of offcuts of pallet wood, and essentially trying to see if I can make something that resembles a mini barn door, with the strips of pallet wood acting as the door brace, holding the thin strips of acacia wood together. I had cut the acacia wood to strips that are about 6 inches or 15 centimeters long, as that seemed a reasonable size for a little fairy door. So as the glue set on these first ones, I decided to start working on prepping some more bits of scrap for different types of fairy doors. Now I must admit, things didn't go so well this past week, as I became ill with a flu during the week, and as such my mind was just a fuzzy mess. There was plenty of times where I thought I was recording and I wasn't, and plenty of odd angles I seem to have set up on the camera, so sorry, I wasn't feeling very well. And this video may seem it's jumping all over the place a bit. So with some chessboard offcuts cut into strips and some pine with some beveled edges, I glued them up in much the same way as the first set of doors. If I were to try and regularly sell these as a product, I would probably use a CNC or a router template to be able to make them out of one solid piece of wood, as this method would make it difficult to sell at a reasonable price. So these are more just a fun little project to be able to use up some of the scrap, and maybe even get the kids involved. So with the glue now set on the first set, I used a roll of tape to mark an arch on the top of one of the doors, to be able to round it off and give it a different look. And I took that over to the scroll saw, with it set to a slow speed to try and reduce the chance of splitting the wood, and carefully cut along the line. In some cultures, fairy doors are seen to invite good luck and protection to a person's home, where they often leave little notes and gifts out for the fairies. And of course, kids seem to love the idea of having little fairy folk running around. They gained a lot of popularity in the 1990s and 2000s in Europe and North America for kids to do as little DIY craft projects. Some towns and villages still hold the tradition of leaving out a trail of little fairy doors around for people to find. So with a set of doors now made, it's time to make the frames and back pieces for them to attach to. For the square acacia wood door, I'm using a half-lap frame method and attaching it to a piece of plywood, with the sizes of this being determined purely by the size of the pieces of scrap I had to hand. Maybe one day I'll finally be able to move into a bigger workshop that allow me to have an assembly table, as doing glue ups on the top of my table saw gets a bit tiresome cleaning up all the mess. For all the glue ups here I'm using CA super glue along with some wood glue. The CA glue acting as a quick hold along with the activator, and the wood glue gives a more stable long-term hold. For this door I wanted to experiment with using some small hinges so that I'll be able to open and close. I found I had to use super glue to attach the hinges to the door. I could use some nails for the frame side, but there wasn't much wood on the door part to be able to fix anything to. And as these hinges were very small, this was very fiddly to do. So the other doors I just fixed permanently in place. I do prefer being able to have a door that opens, as it adds a little bit more extra magic to it. Maybe in future I'll be able to figure out a better solution. And of course you can paint or print out a little scene for the inside, so it looks like it's opening up into a magical world. For the arch door, I'm marking out on a piece of pallet wood what I want the frame to come out to, and cutting that out over on the scroll saw again. I'm trying to practice to get better at using the scroll saw, as it's definitely a tool I would like to use more in my workshop. Hopefully maybe able to do some inlays and animal sculptures on it. Although I need to find a way to be able to have toolless blade changes on this model, as otherwise it's too much of a faff trying to use the tiny little Allen key every time I want to be able to make a little internal cut. To be able to cut the door in, I used a router, although it would have been much easier if I spent the time to be able to make myself a little flattening jig for the router. With all the doors and frames now glued up and pieced together, it was time to make some of the more decorative touches on the scroll saw. I made some little window frames like this one, and some little hinges for the other doors. For the little internal windows, I made sure to drill them out first, so that I'll be able to fit the blade through. And then just cut to the little shapes I marked out. For the wooden hinges, I just cut small little triangles or interesting quirky little shapes to act as the hinges. Again, there's some more sections I thought I was recording but I wasn't, but I added little nails as door handles and I painted the little decorative pieces. And then coated them all with a little bit of spray lacquer. So we go, a fun little project you can get your kids, grandkids, nieces or nephews involved in helping out. There's lots of little fun styles and shapes you can experiment with and use all kinds of little bits to add as decoration. I hope it helps to provide some inspiration. But now it's time to give these little doors a home, and hopefully they provide a little home to a fairy or two. As always, thanks for watching, and give us a like and subscribe if you so enjoyed it. Thanks, and I hope to see you again soon.